What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This week, we're talking about one of the most controversial Ford cars ever built with the dumbest name ever. It's the Ford Probe. You know what it is. It was originally going to replace the Mustang. Ford Mustang fans got very mad and threatened to boycott Ford forever if they did that. So they had to pivot. They came up with a name. Wasn't a great name. Wasn't even a great car. But we're going to find out today. Sit back and enjoy. It's Ford Probe time. It's the early 1990s, and import tuners are all the rage. Cars such as the Honda CRX, Mitsubishi Eclipse, and Nissan 240SX populate every parking lot meet and street race. But one American car stands out as a fierce rival, the Ford Mustang. Its futuristic, rounded body, the roar of its turbocharged 2.2-liter four-banger powering the front wheels. This Mustang looks like it could be twins with the S13. Now, obviously, this never happened. The Ford Mustang of this era was completely different, with an angular body and an iconic 5-liter V8 powering the rear wheels. But this could have been our reality if the top brass at Ford had their way. If it weren't for severe backlash from enthusiasts, the Mustang would have been a Japanese-designed, front-wheel drive 4-cylinder sports coupe, and we would never have had the Ford Probe. So, how did this idea come to be? What part did Mazda have in it all? And how did this car stack up to its competition from Japan and Europe? This and more on today's Pass Gas. It's the Ford Probe. Hello and welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Nolan Sykes. Joining me, as always, across from me is the one and only Joe Weber.
What's up, Bomb Goot, Heavy Goot, Bibbly Epsnet, Everybody German.
Good to have you here, Joe. To my left, filling in for Bart, it's
Jimmy Hilton. I'm here. Hey,
wow, you said
bright and early.
Jimmy Hilton, Jim by a tie. How you doing?
Gimbus Wimbus.
Gimbus Windows.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a new one.
Jimmy, what have you been up to car-wise?
Last week I was at my buddy's shop, Chris's, working on my Miata.
Nice.
That thing is, I'm taking over that car from another person who was working on it, and right now I've just been like organizing, trying to find like pieces that are missing.
Yeah. It's an NA Miata?
NA Miata.
What
yeah.
year?
1994.
There's significance to that year for you.
I just like 1994.
You like 94?
Yeah. That's the best year of the Miata, personally, in my opinion. But yeah, just working on that. The Mazda dealership that I've ordered all my parts from, they're like parts guy. I've been there like every day. It's like that Mike Wazowski meme where he's like standing, every time I walk in, it's like this guy's back. Because I'm always giving them like weird part numbers because I'm like using Japanese catalogs to go off and go through I go through everything. I'm like, okay, so what about this? Oh, you don't have that? How about this?
So wait, you could still buy like new old stock?
You can buy so much for that car.
Wow, through Mazda.
Yeah, pretty insane. You could go take your first generation Miata right now to a Mazda dealership and get full timing belt, water pump kit, and they'll do it for you.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. They'll do all the servicing. And then, yeah, you could get like
value.
You can get all the frame pieces, like a ton of the sheet metal they still make.
He still produce it.
Yeah. Though I did buy, just putting this out there for everyone, if you're going to restore Miata, I bought the last jack handle holder clips in the world. Mazda's never making them again. I bought the last one.
Jack handle holder clip.
Yeah. You need 3. I bought 1. The parts guy told me there was 1 left, so I was like, I'll take it.
And Joe, you were telling me you did some car stuff this weekend.
Oh, yeah, I just fixed the convertible top on my E36.
Nice.
That was satisfying.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, mechanically, that car is like very simple. So it's fun to people to just watch a 4-minute video on YouTube and then just jump into it. Yeah, I'm doing that in like 30 minutes.
Have you driven the Z at all?
The Z is not registered, so I drive it locally.
Around the block.
I locally hate it.
Did you get the exhaust on it yet?
No, so I'm gonna.
That's when you're going to get locally hated.
Yeah. Oh, is it really loud?
No, it's not.
I think tomorrow I'm gonna put the steering wheel and the exhaust.
Nice. Yeah. I'm going to do some car stuff this evening. I've been chipping away at my EF Civic out in the parking lot because I signed up for a track day at Streets of Willow. The second half of this year at Donut is going to be incredibly busy. So I'm trying to like get
Sounds
fun
like
stuff.
You're getting shipped off to war. And you're
Repeatedly.
I gotta have kids. I gotta marry my wife.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? No, but it is going to be very busy. incredibly hectic schedule later this year. So I'm trying to hack in fun stuff now while I can. But I've got a bunch of suspension components I need to put in the car with new bushings and everything tonight. I'm going to try to figure out some interior stuff. I ordered
You need anything from Chris?
Well, I need to take the interior out at some point. I want it for a cage.
Okay.
And I talked to him anyway. I was like, hey, could you resell this stuff? And it didn't really sound like yes was the answer. He's like, I'll see what I can do. But not a lot of demand for old EF Civic, crusty.
His shop is insane. The amount of parts,
amazing. He's like the guy.
Yeah, the EF guy.
Yeah. Anyway, so we get into Ford probe our minds with some Ford.
Really, really can't wait to hear why they call it the probe.
We'll be right back after these messages. This podcast is sponsored by Chime. Chime is banking done right. Open a checking account with no monthly fees and no maintenance fees. Get paid up to 2 days early when you set up direct deposit. Work on your financial goals through Chime today. Open an account in 2 minutes at chime.com/gas. That's chime.com/gas. Chime. Feels like progress.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Timing depends on submission of payment file. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. Bank ranking and number of ATMs according to U.S. News and World Report 2023. Chime checking account required.
This podcast is sponsored by Square. Square is a game changer if you own your own business. It's easy to use, it's flexible, and it comes with comprehensive tools to manage your own business. Square keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/gas. That's SQUARE.com/GO/gas. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Now back to the show.
The first generation Mustang was a groundbreaking car that instantly struck a chord. It sold millions and became a bona fide classic all within the first couple years of its production run. However, by the end of its run, the first generation Mustang had, quote, grown fat and lazy, trying to appeal to customers who demanded heavier, more luxurious models. This was the antithesis of how the car came to be. So, when it was time for a complete overhaul, engineers wanted to return to the root idea. Meanwhile, Japanese cars were starting to creep up on the USDM market share. These cars couldn't be more different than the bloated big block muscle cars the Mustang was trying to emulate. The minds over at Ford saw this trend and started designing the second-gen Mustang to fit this changing world. Spearheaded by Lee Iacocca, this new pony car was intended to be a, quote, fun-to-drive economy car rather than a fire-breathing gas monster.
Is the second gen, is that the Mustang 2?
Yeah.
The result, the Mustang 2, missed the mark. The base model featured a 2.3-liter four-cylinder that spit out 88 horsepower, but even the optional V6 made it only around 100. Despite being designed with help from design house Ghia, it wasn't much of a looker. Maybe the worst part, however, is that it shared the same chassis as the Pinto, a notoriously awful car.
It's weird because that same mindset worked for Lee Iacocca later on, but it just didn't work for this model.
I think they just hit it. The first generation Mustang was such a cool car.
Yeah.
And like 64 to 71, right? I believe
so.
So that's like, some of the coolest Mustangs ever.
For sure.
And it's different it looks sick. And then comes out with this like little dinky looking
It
car.
was actually big, and it looked like a saggy Trans Am.
Yeah, I don't know, it just missed the mark so much with it.
For all its pitfalls, the Mustang 2 actually did see good sales throughout the oil crisis, but enthusiasts were left unimpressed. By the early 80s, Ford was in trouble. They needed a game changer. As you might remember from our 4-part series on Mazda, they found success in the US market with their rotary-powered Cosmo in the late 1960s. But by the 70s, demand had dried up significantly, and Mazda found itself in a bit of a pinch. They were starved for funds, and that's when the Blue Oval stepped in. Ford, who already owned 7% of the Japanese company, increased their stake to 25% by 1979. By that time, the world was deep into the second gas crisis, and American cars were bloated and far behind their foreign counterparts when it came to fuel efficiency. Meanwhile, Mazda cracked the code on making small, fun-to-drive cars that could still meet strict emissions and fuel economy standards. The RX-7 was proof. While it wasn't exactly fuel efficient compared to modern cars, it was small, lightweight, and handled like a dream. Ford saw Mazda as the perfect partner to help them pivot away from thirsty V8s and into the brave new world of efficient performance.
What do you mean that thing no got pistons in it?
It's got a spinning what?
Oh, what? Oh, Dorito. I thought them was chips.
I thought them was chips.
But this wasn't just about saving money. It was about survival. Japanese imports were eating Detroit's lunch. Toyota Celica, Datsun 280ZX, and Honda Prelude were dominating the compact sporty coupe market. American muscle cars suddenly looked like dinosaurs. They were heavy, slow, inefficient, and outdated. Ford had to adapt to stay relevant. After the initial release of the Mustang II, they caved to demands and brought back a V8 option. But was that the right move? Moving into this new decade, they had to reevaluate once again what made a Mustang, even if it meant ditching the V8 and rear-wheel drive.
They had almost ditched rear-wheel drive? Almost. That's making me anxious just hear it.
So, Ford did the unthinkable. They started developing an all-new Mustang, codenamed SN8, with front-wheel drive and a 4-cylinder engine. The new platform was based heavily on the Mazda-designed front-wheel drive architecture, powered by a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It was the direct result of Mazda's engineering influence. In theory, this was smart. The new Mustang would be lighter, more efficient, and more responsive in tight corners, and finally Ford would have an answer to all the imports. But the clientele who bought the Mustang had no patience for anything but a V8. When word got out that Ford was thinking about replacing a Mustang with a front-wheel drive, Mazda-based coupe, Mustang purists lost their mind.
Reddit must have been crazy that.
Oh, dude. The Mustang wasn't just a car. It was an institution, and the blue oval was pissing all over their shrine. It was an unforgivable crime.
They're like V8s. They're like rear-wheel drive. They're like this around.
How people responded to the Mach-E.
That's a separate model. They didn't even kill the Mustang.
Yeah.
Mustang clubs across the country mobilized like they were preparing for war. Letter-writing campaigns flooded Ford's headquarters with angry pleas to, quote, save the Mustang. Enthusiasts weren't just upset. They were personally offended. They felt betrayed. This was America's pony car. How could Ford hand it over to Japanese engineering? And it didn't stop with angry letters. Enthusiasts took to the phones, tying up Ford's customer service lines for weeks. Car magazines piled on as well. Car and Driver ran an editorial questioning Ford's sanity. Road and Track called it a fundamental misunderstanding of what made the Mustang special. Even mainstream newspapers picked up the story, sensing the cultural rift Ford had created.
Someone really dropped the ball because it was probably leaked in a way of like, hey, look, guys, you got to start phoning these people and tell them we want a rear-wheel drive V8 Mustang.
It got so bad that a group of hardcore Mustang fans threatened to boycott Ford entirely. They warned that if Ford released this front-wheel drive Mustang, they would walk away from the brand forever and take their money to Chevrolet or Dodge instead. And this threat wasn't idle, Jimmy. The Camaro and Firebird were still holding onto their V8 rear-wheel drive layouts, and Ford's move risked handing the market over to GM on a polished silver platter.
Yeah, those are like, what, Trans Am? You got your Firebird.
WS6.
Yeah, good car.
Well, there's also the Charger, the Shelby Charger that was like pretty bad.
I don't think I'd go to Dodge if I was a Ford guy, and I'd go to Chevrolet.
At this time, I don't think Dodge had like an answer for this, besides the Viper, but that's like a totally different class. Behind closed doors, Ford execs went into full damage control. Killing the project entirely would mean writing off years of R&D and millions of dollars. But on the other hand, they couldn't afford to alienate their most loyal customer base.
They're moist.
They're moist, they're loyal, and they're full of piss.
The solution, question mark? A strategic pivot. The front-wheel drive coupe that they'd been working on wasn't a bad car, it just wasn't a Mustang. Instead of scrapping the whole project, they decided to rebrand it as something new. The car was designed on top of the Mazda GD platform, had the same bones as the MX-6 and the 626. This gave it a solid, well-balanced foundation. Under the hood was a 2.2-liter four-cylinder making a humble 110 horsepower with an optional turboed version for the GT, which bumped output to 145.
That's pretty good.
For the late 1980s, that wasn't bad, especially considering the Probe weighed under 2,800 pounds. The GT version packed more than just extra power. It came with a sport-tuning suspension. It had four-wheel disc brakes and available adjustable suspension. Very cool.
That's cool.
Whoa. Features usually reserved for high-end performance cars at the time. And thanks to Mazda's influence, the Probe handled with an agility that was uncommon for American cars. It was quick off the line. It was nimble in the corners. It had a balanced front and rear weight distribution that gave it a planted feel even at higher speeds. I would love to drive one of these things.
We'll be right back after these messages. This podcast is sponsored by Chime. When you're in your mid-20s and you're just starting to build financial progress, it's really hard. It's super slow. You feel like you're not doing anything. You get a credit card that has like a $500 limit. Well, Chime understands that every dollar counts. That's why when you set up direct deposit through Chime, you get access to fee-free features like free overdraft coverage, getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit, and more. Learn more at chime.com/gas. Chime has some amazing features. Getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit is a game changer. Also, having 24/7 customer support is super handy. Chime is banking done right. Open a checking account with no monthly fees and no maintenance fees. With qualifying direct deposits, you're eligible for free overdraft up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. To date, Chime has spotted members over $30 billion. Work on your financial goals through Chime today. Open an account in 2 minutes at chime.com/gas. That's chime.com/gas. Chime. Feels like progress.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot and eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Timing depends on submission of payment file. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. Bank ranking and number of ATMs according to U.S. News and World Report 2023. Chime checking account required.
This podcast is sponsored by Square. You ever go to checkout at like a small store or something and the checkout experience is just horrible? The scanner doesn't work. The card reader doesn't work. And they end up taking your numbers down by hand. That's why Square is such a game changer. I love being able to walk up to like a little Square kiosk and put my card in and it's done, just like that. One of the first things I noticed about Square was just how easy it was to use. Running a business involves a lot of moving parts, and Square helps simplify that. The hardware looks polished and fits right into your space without feeling intrusive, and the software is incredibly straightforward and intuitive. You don't even need special training. Plus, Square supports all major credit cards and payment methods, including contactless options like Apple Pay and Google Pay. Checkout is fast and easy for your customers. Square keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/gas. That's SQUARE.com/GO/gas. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Now back to the show.
While the mechanical side was handled by Mazda, Ford and Ghia took care of the looks. Ford designer Toshi Saito crafted the sleek aerodynamic look, ensuring the Probe had a futuristic, winged-piercing silhouette. The shape wasn't just for show, Jimmy. It had a drag coefficient of 0.31, which was remarkably low for the era, and helped improve fuel efficiency and high-speed stability. For reference, the Fox body Mustang had a drag coefficient of 0.44, which is a lot more. And I think the first-gen Prius was 0.30, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
What year is this right now? Do we know?
Late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
The early design influences came from Carrozzeria Ghia, which Ford had bought in the 1970s. They contributed to the coupe's distinctive proportions, a long hood, sloping roofline, and tightly drawn rear end.
I do think this was like one of the first bubble coupes of the 90s.
Yes. So you can see hints of Ghia's design language in the subtle curves and sharp character line, giving the Probe a vaguely European flair that set it apart from the more angular and boxy looks of the Mustang and Camaro. Inside, the car reflected a growing emphasis on driver-focused design.
I like that.
Mimi Vandermolen, Ford's lead designer at the time, and one of the first women to hold such a position in the industry, was responsible for the cabin's ergonomic layout. She prioritized a clean, simple instrument panel with controls angled towards the driver, creating a cockpit-like feel. The seats were low and sporty. The steering wheel was thick and grippy, and the shifter positioned perfectly for quick, confident shifts. Then came the pop-up headlights, which was an instant cool factor, you would agree, Jimmy. They weren't just for design flourish. They helped reduce drag when closed and gave the Probe that sleek, high-tech vibe that screamed late 80s futurism. For this new car, they needed a name that sounded modern, sleek, and high-tech. Something that would signal Ford's leap into the future without carrying the weight of the Mustang's legacy. After some brainstorming, they landed on Probe.
Why?
They went with their first draft.
With everything buttoned up for a launch in 1989, no one knew how the Probe would be received.
1989, the Soviet Union is still a thing, and we're coming out with a car called the Probe.
That's right.
The Berlin Wall has yet to come down.
Yet to fall. Hasselhoff still hasn't sung yet there.
He still hasn't eaten his hamburger on the floor.
Upon initial release, car magazines ate it up like a sloppy cheeseburger on the ground. MotorTrend praised the Probe's handling and efficiency, calling it, quote, the best handling front-wheel drive car Ford has ever built. Car and Driver applauded the GT's turbocharged performance, noting that it could hit 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds, which was quick for a four-cylinder in 89.
Yeah, that's a lot.
The Probe even earned a spot on Car and Driver's 10 best list in its debut year.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Off to a good start.
But did it steal buyers from the Mustang, Camaro, or even the Japanese competition like the Honda Prelude or Toyota Celica? Not really. Mustang loyalists weren't about to swap their V8s for a turbocharged four-cylinder with front-wheel drive, no matter how sporty it felt. Camaro and Firebird buyers weren't budging either. Their loyalty was to Detroit muscle and not Japan. The real competition was with the imports. The Honda Prelude and Toyota Celica were already well established in the sporty coupe market, and the Probe, despite being a genuinely good car, was playing catch-up. The Prelude offered precision handling and Honda's bulletproof reliability. The Celica was stylish, affordable, and available with all-wheel drive in the GT4 trim. The Probe was fast, but not that fast. It handled well, but not better than the Prelude, and while it looked cool, the Ford badge carried less cachet than the rising reputation of Honda and Toyota.
So they made a mid car.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Like, it's like, I'd rather just go get like an actual Japanese car.
Yeah, sounds like it. The Probe's pricing didn't help much either, Jimmy. While the base model was competitive, the turbocharged GT pushed into Mustang territory, and when faced with a choice between a front-wheel drive four-cylinder and a rear-wheel drive V8 for roughly the same price, buyers overwhelmingly went for the Mustang. Ford ended up in a strange position of building a great car that couldn't find its audience. But the Probe wasn't a failure, it just wasn't a Mustang. It found a niche among younger buyers who wanted something sporty, but didn't care about V8 muscle or rear-wheel drive. It was efficient, stylish, and surprisingly fun to drive. It didn't kill the Mustang, but it helped Ford prove that they could compete within the sporty coupe market without sacrificing performance or style. The second-gen Ford Probe was lower, wider, and sexier. It was built on the new Mazda GE platform. It had better aerodynamics, sleeker looks, and most importantly, more power. Gone were the angular wedge-like lines of the 80s. The new Probe had a smooth, organic shape that looked straight out of a concept car. It was longer and lower than its predecessor too, with a slippery drag coefficient of just 0.29, better than the Ferrari 348 of the same era. Under the hood, the base model came with a 2-liter four-banger making 118 horsepower, not mind-blowing, but enough for daily driving. But the real star was once again the GT, which packed a 2.5-liter Mazda-designed V6, making 164 horsepower.
That's fun. That's
160 foot-pounds of torque.
I think that is the same engine that's used in the Lantis.
Mazda Lantis.
Yeah, this thing's sick.
Oh, my Lantis. That's a package.
2-liter to V6, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
But 2.5 though. Oh, 2.5 KL. Yeah.
Is that the same one? If not, I think I just found a hack because those, they never came here. So if it came in a Ford, that'd be cool.
And then slid in what?
A Miata.
Really?
Yeah. That'd be cool.
a V6 in a Miata?
Yeah.
It's 164 horsepower from a V6 with added weight.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, people would be like, whoa, Jimmy.
Okay, so it's KLDE.
So it's the same engine as an Atlantis. Yes, that is very cool. Very, very cool.
164 horsepower, 160 torques. I might not sound like a lot today, but in the early 90s, that was some serious muscle for a front-wheel drive coupe. and weighing just over 2,800 pounds. So pretty good.
That's good.
That's sick. The GT came with a sport tuned suspension once again and had bigger brakes and wider tires, giving it some serious grip in the corners. The interior got a significant upgrade as well. Mimi van der Molen was back, refining the cockpit's driver center layout. The instrument panel curved towards the driver with simple, easy-to-reach controls. The seats were low and supportive, giving the Probe a proper sports car feel. It really locked you in with that bolstering. Even the materials felt more upscale than before, with soft-touch plastics and available leather trim. It felt like a car aimed at young professionals. It was stylish, sporty, and just high-tech enough. Then there were the looks. Pop-up headlights made a triumphant return, and the swoopy profile gave the Probe a distinctly European flair. The GT's front fascia and 16-inch 5-spoke alloy wheels allowed for an even more aggressive look. If the first-gen Probe had a bit of an awkward American car trying to be Japanese vibe, the second-gen truly looked international, like it could have come from a high-end European design house.
I remember one day, just as I'd started dinner, I went out to Sautel to get lunch. I came back, and I remember seeing one of these on the street, and it had like a roll cage in it.
Really?
Yeah, it had, I think I have photos of it on my phone. I'll have to dig and see if I can find it, but it had like pop-up headlight delete, like it was like a sleek headlight.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it had like, it was lowered. It had like some wheels on it. The guy was obviously like a track rat kind of guy.
Track rat. I bet it goes off in the Ford Probe Facebook groups.
Do you think it's called Ford Probe Owners Group, or is it called like Probe to Meet Me or something, like some weird?
What if Zach Job, become a Ford guy, Zach Probe?
We'll be right back after these messages. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check that your headlights are on first before driving at night. You guys ever get people honking at you, flashing their brights at you at night, only to realize that you've been driving for 10 minutes with no headlights? It's terrifying. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Potential savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate North American Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois. Now back to the show.
Despite all the improvements, the car still had one little issue. Ford's marketing couldn't fully separate it from the Mustang legacy, and with the Fox body Mustang still flying off dealer lots and the upcoming SN95 Mustang generating buzz, there just wasn't room for two sporty Ford coupes in the lineup. And the import competition wasn't making things easy either. The Honda Prelude SI and Toyota Celica GT4 both offered more prestige and performance. The Mitsubishi Eclipse Turbo and Eagle Talon TSI delivered more outright power with all-wheel drive traction. Nissan's 240SX with its rear-wheel drive setup had purist appeal as well. The Probe was fast and fun and well-built, but it was up against some of the toughest competition of the decade. Despite solid sales and good reviews, by the mid-90s, the Probe was in trouble. The market was shifting. People wanted SUVs. Sports cars were on the decline, and the Mustang wasn't going anywhere. The rise of the SUV craze in the mid-90s was swift and ruthless. Young buyers who might have been looking at sporty coupes in the early 90s were now gravitating towards Ford Explorers and Jeep Cherokees. Why sell for 2 doors and limited trunk space when you could get 4-wheel drive, extra cargo room, and a higher seating position? Sales of the Ford began slipping. In 1994, Ford sold over 120,000 Probes.
Oh, that's a lot.
That still sounds like a lot.
But by 96, that number had dropped to under 40,000. Oh, and Ford wasn't blind to the shifting winds. The Explorer was a cash cow, and the company was putting more energy into trucks and utility vehicles. It also helped that around this time, Ford was actively lobbying the government to make sure that trucks and SUVs didn't have to abide by the same fuel economy standards as cars like the Probe. It just made sense for them to put their eggs into the SUV basket. The Mustang was still thriving, and the Mercury Cougar was waiting in the wings as a more traditional American coupe option.
I am wondering if it would have done better in sales if it wasn't like sold as a Ford. If they'd maybe gone like a Scion route where they'd made their
Call it something else.
like a younger branding.
What was that? What was Mazda's luxury brand called?
It started with an A. It was like Allegra or like
Avanti.
Avanti.
If they had done like a side project where maybe, Mazda was already built, or Ford had the Ranger, and Mazda built the B2000, right? What if they had like a third sub-brand with an even more basic truck, but put like cool graphics on it, like a little mini sport truck. You have the Probe, and maybe you have
like a little like SUVs.
SUV or like a city car, some sort of city car, marketed towards young people. I could see that.
Yeah, I think that would have done better for them.
Maybe, yeah, because like again, first of all, it's still called the Probe. Change the name of that. Don't have the Ford badge on it.
There was just such like, oh well, if I'm gonna get a Ford, I'd get a Mustang. You know, like why would I get a Probe?
Right.
You know.
But again, it sounds like
I think if it was called something else,
there's competition too,
and it was just like marketed as a younger audience thing, I think it would have done.
So
Also, if they were to shave some weight off, it'd be way better. Like if they made it just over 2,000 pounds.
my EF Civic weighs 2150
Okay.
right now, and that's stock.
Yeah,
That's somewhat stock.
that's yeah. I see the Probe though as more of like a GT car,
Yeah,
so it needs to be kind of a little bit more weight. It had batteries that were usable too.
maybe like 2,600 pounds.
Yeah, but still it's 28. Yeah,
28.
shave it down just a little.
200 pounds though is a lot,
It is.
especially if you're trying to make a car that's livable.
Yeah.
You know, not like a track car. Yeah. So in 1997, Ford pulled the plug on the Probe. Sales had been steadily declining, but it wasn't just the numbers that killed the Probe. The market for affordable front-wheel drive sports coupes was shrinking. Even the Prelude and Celica saw their numbers decline by the late 90s. The rise of sports sedans, hot hatches, and SUVs was cannibalizing the coupe market. And Ford, with its hands full building Explorers and F-150s, saw no reason to keep the Probe alive.
I got my hands full. I can't possibly carry more.
I can't save you. You just got to sit here. I'll be back maybe in like 50 years.
That's sad.
Today, the Probe has a bit of a cult following. Clean GT models are getting rare to find, but they're beloved by enthusiasts who appreciate them for what they are. The car community is full of stories about Probe GTs surprising more powerful cars at track days, thanks to their sharp steering and balanced suspension. At the end of the day, the Probe remains one of Ford's most intriguing what-ifs. What if Ford had marketed it differently, not as a Mustang successor, but as a rival to the Prelude and Celica? What if it had been rear-wheel drive? What if the SUV craze hadn't pulled Ford's attention away from sporty coupes? It's fun to think about, but the Probe's legacy is already secure. It might not have changed the sports car world, but it showed that Ford could think outside the box. In a way, the Probe paved the way for future Ford-Mazda collaborations, including the Ford Estate and Mazda Tribute. And it left behind a loyal fan base that still celebrates its quirky, underappreciated place in Ford history. In the end, the Mustang didn't just survive the 80s, it thrived. And thanks to the backlash, Ford learned a valuable lesson. You don't mess with an iCar. And that's the story. I don't think that being rear-wheel drive would have saved it. No, I think there's a lot of merit to front-wheel drive cars. I mean, I've learned a lot of my career here.
Yeah.
I mean, the Civic is one of my favorite cars ever, and I mean, that wouldn't be better with rear-wheel drive.
No, it would be heavier. It would be more expensive.
Yeah.
I think I've come to appreciate front-wheel drive cars even more being here. And like, I mean, yeah, Civics are such a cult following. And
Yeah. I think people who can't drive say that front-wheel drive is boring to drive on.
Wow.
I do. Shots fired. Yeah. Once you learn the ways, it's like, okay, I'll drive anything with any drivetrain.
Yeah.
That's the real key, I think. But yeah, they should have called it the Probe, I think, in the first place. It's just a weird name.
Even back then, it's a weird.
I don't know why. Who went into that meeting room? There had to be at least 3 better names on that list.
I think it's Ford does love its space-themed names.
But like satellite.
Yet
How about that?
already taken.
Plymouth Laser.
They could have named it the Ford Falcon.
Falcon would be pretty sick.
That would have made Australian enthusiasts piss all over their shrines.
Yeah. Would Falcon fans be pissed? I don't really know. I don't know if there'd be enough.
Who cares?
Yeah.
If it was the 80s in America, I don't think they would have. I don't think most Ford American fans were like, oh, yeah, they're pissing all over the Australian fan. I don't think they would
wouldn't even know. Anyway, not sad story, but
It had 15 minutes of fame, disappeared.
these things are pretty cool. If you want a interesting project car, I think look into the Ford Probe. The second generation is what I would choose. It's pretty sick.
That V6 is fun. I'm gonna look on Copart after this.
My name is Nolan Sykes. Follow me at Nolan J. Sykes. Follow Joe at Joe G. Weber.
Airman and Garrett.
Follow Jimmy at RussellJimmy.jp.
Bright and early.
Big thanks to our crew. We got Edgar and Audrey as always. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We're coming up on 300 episodes, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks to Anthony Hardin Jr., our writer.
Yes. And thank you again for listening. All right, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.